Welcome back to our second segment of Community Tapestry. And if you're just joining us, my name is Napoleon Bell. I'm the Executive Director with the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission. And unlike on the first segment, we have Miss Toni Teague.
Well, hello.
Yes, we have Miss Toni Teague with us, the co-host for this segment. We're transitioning though from Coda because, but on Coda, there's a lot of stories that are told on Coda.
There are.
So I think, why don't you take us into this next
So
segment?
speaking of stories, for most of us, stories have been an important part of our lives. We tend to think of stories in terms of books, happenings on stage, things that happen in the movies, and in some cases, the long stories that our elders pass along to us while they tell those stories from one generation to the next. Our next guest tells stories by weaving a verbal tapestry nearly every time he speaks. He is a teacher, storyteller, and so much more. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Kevin Cordi. Kevin, I see you.
You are here.
Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. It's excellent to be here. And I know that you two have quite stories to tell as well, together and likewise.
Well, I think this is going to be a storytelling segment.
Let's make it. Why not?
Exactly right.
So you have this special magic about you, and I had an opportunity to meet you recently, and you were telling a story. So how did you become a storyteller?
Well, that's a great question, and I usually answer it two different ways. The very first thing is that I learned stories from my parents. My mother is from West Virginia, and I good-naturedly say that stories are born in West Virginia and everybody else borrows, but that really works when I'm in West Virginia.
Right.
But we only traveled to West Virginia at any given time. We couldn't afford. So my mother would make sure that we and my 5 brothers and sisters, we would sit down. She'd literally say, "You aren't getting up until you hear this story." And then we'd sit and we'd listen and we'd be mesmerized. My father would come by and say, "It didn't go by that way." It was different. And we fell in love with story, and I fell in love with story. And today, I still consider the key storyteller in my life, in our family, as my mother. But I'm, running second. But then I also say that story is a discipline. It's an art. It's a craft. And there are storytellers all over the country, and there's an organization, SOCO, right here in Columbus. But I learned story when I was 18 years old. Most professional storytellers start when they're about 40. I don't know why. But when I was 18, a storytelling conference came into Kent State, and the very first thing is, I was studying to be a journalist, educator, teacher, and I said, I'll only be there 5 minutes. I got there was this little giant of a man. He was Irish. His name was Bat Burns. And the first thing he did is he got up and he said, "Oh, let me tell you about the little people. They're so small and they're everywhere." I'm like, where am I? What's going on? And it was followed by an Appalachian clog dancer, which I thought clog was something in a sink, but it's a type of dance. But she would tell the stories of the Appalachian Mountains. So I fell in love with the idea of story, and then that went away a week later, and I'm like, wait, I still want to learn stories. And it took me a year to find a place where they gather, and that was in Cleveland, where they gather and tell stories. And, long story short, which is never easy with me, I got my master's degree in storytelling and education, and I have my doctorate in storytelling and process drama.
And
people were like, who can get that?
Right. That's a degree.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody say, go to school to be a storyteller.
Well, there you go. Well, my mother, until she saw me, she would say, "Here's my teacher son." But today she says, "This is my storyteller."
Oh.
And so that's what storytelling does. It's the magic of listening. Some people say, well, what are the greatest skills that you can have as a storyteller? And I say, listen to hundreds of stories, and you'll be able to tell more.
Oh.
Well, let me ask you a question. I want to back up all the way to when you were
Just a wee little boy. My mother says, as small as a donut. I don't even know what that means, but that's her language.
So, storytelling.
Sure.
But were you said to have been telling a story? You know how your parents go, "Are you telling a story?"
Oh,
You know,
I
are you
used to have
telling a
a
story?
business card that says, "I don't tell lies, I tell stories."
Okay.
But I do have friends that win liar contests. My friend Bill Lepp is a West Virginia storyteller and former Methodist minister,
Oh, wow.
and tells a lie that would last 45 minutes long and travels around the country doing that. And I've told a few tall tales myself. And the difference is that you can live in the world of that fiction. And it's not a lie, it's an imagined world. And so many kids are staying in the here and now when they should play. They should play with ideas. I'm very imaginative, and I teach at Ohio Dominican University, and I teach storytelling classes and children's literature. How often did you just sit down and say, let's just play and let's envision and imagine, whether it's with kids or adults, I'm allowed to do it because I have that moniker of storyteller, but people need to really be imaginative. It helps them in business. Imagine the story that you are telling, when you walk out. If you don't, you need to do more than rehearsal. You need to think about it. You need to put some heart into it. You need to express it. You need to play with it. You need to rewind it so that you can find that you're telling the story, not the one, the only story. Some people think, well, you got to tell the one story of the business. No, tell the story that person needs right now. And the only way you can do that is by practicing the craft.
So Kevin, tell me, so you're an educator,
Yes.
and I remember listening to a TED Talk last year that a young man, a high schooler, gave, and he said that he wasn't going to be valedictorian anymore of his school because he took a music class, and he, focused on the arts, and so since that was worth 3 credits instead of 4, it dropped the GPA and the other 18 people that were, slated in the running. So because he took something that he loved, it was going to drop his GPA even though he got an A in it. So let me fast forward that into playing and what storytelling can mean for kids in school, because I see so many students that are stellar at mastering the let me figure out how to get an A game, but I haven't seen so many students that know how to live. So how does storytelling play into that?
Well, I'll tell you, I taught high school for 14 years. I taught English, I taught humanities, I taught reading, but I also taught storytelling. I was the first full-time high school storytelling teacher in the country. And I traveled for 11 years with high school teenagers. And I remember the day Jose came up, and he played football. And Jose said to his football coach, I need to work around storytelling before I can do football. And they had to negotiate a schedule. And his football coach said, what do you mean? He said, because this is a part of my life. And he says that my father no longer tells the story. He's not that torchbearer. He's not there anymore. I want to be there to tell those stories. And what legacy? There's nothing wrong with football. It has great stories in itself.
Absolutely.
All right?
Yeah, some of the best
But what
stories.
legacy do we move forward? So first thing, we need to see the arts in all disciplines. We need to see it in math. We need to see it in science. But we also need to see how story helps people identify and live. Because we're not preparing for a vocation or occupation, we're preparing for a vocation. So as we teach these students these disciplines, we teach them how to think. We teach them how to rewind their lives, look back, look forward. And one of the best ways is to ask them a story, to learn the stories. Now, I taught every day storytelling classes. In my last year of my high school, I had advanced storytelling, applied storytelling, my troupe, Voices of Illusion, would do CDs, and I never auditioned my students. I believe talent comes with time. And I was a theater coach and a director, and I auditioned, but I believe everybody has stories inside them, and that we need to have places to tell them. And so I want to take Lacey. Lacey came up to me, and she said, we took her to the National Storytelling Conference. We raised $14,000 to bring 14 people, and she said, Mr. Cordi, I was so scared. I was going to be in a full conference with adults, and adults never listened to me. And I said, what are you talking about, Lacey? We got there. She said that more storytellers ask her how she does what she does, that she felt worth and value. And so I said to another student, an honor student, Maggie, I said, Maggie, your story is valuable. I want you to go out and find another teacher who asks you for your story or your advice. She came back 2 weeks later, red-flushed, blushing, and said, Mr. Cordi, either I can't do this assignment or I don't know how, because outside of you, no one had asked me what I thought, let alone tell the story. So I went to my principal and I said, this is a problem. I said, we need to teach beyond the discipline. We need to teach who we're teaching. We need to know who we're talking to. My principal said, we'll have a meeting. And that meeting never showed up. So I helped form with my students, empowered my students to create storytelling clubs. And Jose, that same student, who, by the way, I took him into his elementary school, and all his teachers came by, because he was performing for 400 people, and they said, can we talk to you? I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do? Can we talk to you? Can we talk to you? And I want you to know that Jose has such a stuttering problem. We didn't think he'd have a normal, just an everyday conversation. I said, that same boy has done 300 shows with me. I don't audition my students. Talent comes with time.
Okay.
But we did the video for Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, and we made Jack Canfield cry, who created Chicken Soup for the Soul. So that's how story holds on to your heart.
Wow.
But it is a disciplined practice, and we need to study it. We need to learn it.
Well, and two things that I'm hearing here is, first of all, is that you're being able to bring back, your past or tell a story of that, but also to appreciate, you're appreciating the present and the past. And then one thing you also talked about was the youth clubs. And I understand that these youth storytelling clubs, there's over 83, is it nationwide?
We registered 83 youth storytelling clubs across the country, in Japan and in Canada. And we were able to give handbooks to thousands and thousands of teachers and educators. And the culmination came into a book that I co-authored with another storyteller librarian named Judy Sema, called Raising Voices, Creating Youth Storytelling Groups and Troops. And so people still use it. The American Library Association called it the blueprint of youth storytelling. So I thought that was nice praise.
Nice.
Right.
But the most important thing is that we're able to listen to our students. Whether we're in platform storytelling, like I perform for 2,000 people. I don't expect students to go out, but I'm not going to limit them and say that they can't.
Right.
But I've heard from students who are in Japan right now who said that I'm using my storytelling ability to communicate across cultures. I just left the Middle East with 50 teenagers, 25 from Qatar, and we use stories to promote equity and diversity. At the very end, we did a 2.5-hour Umassiya, which is an Arabic performance, totally in Arabic, and I don't know Arabic, but we did it for the entire community, and I directed this. So you can carry story anywhere you go, everywhere you go. Story is the legacy that we have to pass on, but also in the present. What you said about the past and the present. I honored the wisdom keepers. Toni, you talked about the elders. I call them the wisdom keepers. We can pass on our stories. Sometimes we rush to television and we let them tell a story. But there's an old folk tale about this American who comes in, and I'll give you the short version. He comes in, he's wearing Bermuda shorts, and he's got this giant camera, and he says, and he comes to Africa, and he comes to this small village. He says, I'm going to give you the gift of civilization, and he paints, has paved sidewalks, and last gift he gives, a 50-inch plasma screen. And so he says, I'm coming in 6 months. You can watch, you can watch The Big Bang Theory. Here it is, all right. And so 6 months later, he's in this little place in Africa, and no one's walked on these sidewalks. And the television has potted plants over it. But looking to the right, there is this man dressed in beautiful outfit, and his hands are flowing like a roller coaster, and he's talking, and when he moves back, they move back. When he moves forward, they move forward. And he comes up and he says, what are you doing? He said, I gave you this television. It can take you to all places. It can take you to things that you've never been. It knows about Mexico. It knows about Big Bang Theory. It can tell you the news. It knows everything. It knows everything. And they said, we love that you gave us this gift. And this television may know this thing called Big Bang Theory. And it may know your news. But only, and they pointed to that man with the roller coaster hands, the storyteller knows me. And so we teach through these stories. How often, we have, a long time ago we had the campaign of just say no. Remember that?
Right.
All right?
Oh, yeah.
There was something inherent wrong with that. Stories present a picture so that kids can say, wow, I don't think I want to do what that wolf did.
Right.
He got captured. Not to say that all stories end up happily ever after. That's a Disney-fied way. But we need to use stories more as educational tools at all levels. I've worked with preschoolers who want to be monkeys, or see if they can, want to take care of a monkey in an imaginary land, and from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, for all those hours, we envisioned that fictional world. But then I've also been with adults who were amazing. I worked with a 2-time Vietnam vet who was a bouncer and told stories through song and through singing and through everything. And I've met beautiful people through the storytelling, ordinary people with extraordinary stories. Person next to me, I said, have you ever served in World War II? And he began to tell me, oh yes, I went to a small place called Hiroshima. Huh. Wow. And I was a medic. And I had been in meetings with this person almost every week. And it was amazing to sit down and say, I see you. You are here. And we should tell people that that's a greeting in Zimbabwe, parts of Zimbabwe.
Okay. Well, that's it is really amazing. It's almost like you want to, and I think we might have talked about this. It's just a matter of hearing people's stories. I mean, we could do just a book of person's stories, or I hate to say the TV, or to tape it, because we just talked about that.
The medium, but as long as there's a conversation afterwards.
So we would call it, what is your story? Or something like that.
I hear we should, and not that we are.
Well, I'm putting it out there right now in case somebody steals my idea.
Sure.
It's on tape.
Sure.
So don't steal my idea.
Well, let me tell you about a project I started in 1995. I met a woman named Livia in Brazil. And she said, we ever meet someone at a conference and just have to continue to meet? The last thing she said to me was, I would like to continue, but there's too much distance between Brazil and California. And I was living in California at the time. So we got back, and I told my students, I said, this is the problem. They said, well, just send your stories to them. I said, what are you talking about? He said, just send them. I said, have you ever seen a manila envelope? It's ugly. And so we got our stories. And we got our neighbor stories. We got our town over stories. And we painted a beautiful box, and we painted a dragon on it. And it said, together we make a difference with story. And I shipped it to Brazil. Now, it was supposed to go on a one-person journey. But somebody, Paula Martin, who sent me an email, and she's from Portuguese, and she said, I want that box. That's all it said. I don't know her. So I said to Olivia, here, we got a problem. And she said, well, I'll put our stories, and we'll go, and we'll send it to Argentina. She sent it to Argentina, sorry. And then it went to Alzheimer's patients in Boston. And this story box has traveled every 3 weeks until it came back. And we opened it up to discover all those stories.
Wow.
Now, I have launched a box every other year since 1995 to the present day. When I served as the first academic storyteller in residence for The Ohio State University, we collected 30 story boxes from around the community. And we put those stories, and they went to Israel, and they went to Switzerland. And the box that we have launched today, in Westerville, we have the former children's poet laureate, J. Patrick Lewis, and I sent to 27 celebrated children's poets, Jane Yolen, Nikki Grimes, you name it. And they sent me unfinished poems. And I am sending them to schools all over. It went to West Virginia. The person from West Virginia said, I don't have all this celebrity. I don't think you should send it to me. I said, you should definitely get it. And she had a beautiful banner of all those 27 poets. We launched it at the Thurber Center. And this will come back in February. And it will be filled with poems that were co-written with famous poets and students. And I watched a student say, I wrote this with Jane Yolen.
Right. I think I remember that story box. I mean, from when it was started, because there was a lot of scuttle about it. I mean, I think it was on the news and different things about the story box.
We had like 40 different places. It was on a number of things. It's been on ABC.
Yes.
We went to the one story box. Went to the Geneva United Nations Conference for Children. I'll tell you this just real brief story. Natalie had this little girl. She came walking in. She had this matchbox. She said, I don't have a story, but I have the smallest story box ever. And it was a decorated matchbox. And it went to Israel. And the kids in Israel put their small stories in and sent it back to this day, they have the Light Up a Festival, Storytelling Matchbox Festival every year.
Oh my God.
So think about how one story can spread like wildfire.
Exactly.
It is a discipline, it is a craft, it's what we need to learn.
Amazing, amazing. Now I think we have about 2 minutes left. This time just flew by. We need a couple hours.
Sure, I would love to talk more.
I tell you what, so real quick, you've got a book coming out.
Oh, yes.
Right? Let's tell us about that.
The
Coming
book
soon.
is called Playing with Stories, Story Crafting for Writers, Teachers, and Other Imaginative Thinkers. A lot of storytelling, and when you go around, they work alone. But I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Brian Edmondson in Ohio State, who taught me about dramatic play. We literally would walk in and we would coach each other. I have been on stage in New York, brought 30 students together. We co-created the story, and then they performed it for 400 people. And it can be found in Amazon, and Parkhurst Brothers is the publisher. But one of the most beautiful things is people say that a play is a rehearsal for work. No, it's not. Play is a place where you stop, you say, let's rewind and look at life again. Let's look at how we could do. Maybe we'll fast forward into the future. We don't have to go from beginning, middle, and end. So when I coach people, whether it's businesses or children or dramatists or writers, I say, let's play out loud before we ever write anything on paper, because it's cemented on paper. And we have to, and I'm going to have you both say this, say, I give myself permission to play.
To play. Because we're happy.
There you go.
Exactly. Well, but we're sad because we're out of time. It was killing me. But real quick, in one word.
Kevin, complete this statement for me.
Yes.
Kevin Cordi is
A listener, a deep listener.
A deep listener.
Even though I broke the rule of one word. Because that makes you a better storyteller.
Yeah.
If you deeply listen, you know when someone's really listening to you, and you know when someone's drifting. But to be a storyteller, you also have to be a listener.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Thank you so much
No,
for your
it's
words
a
of
pleasure.
wisdom.
Very
And
much.
we look forward to hearing more about your books. And then also, I know we're going to see you October 11th at the Neighborhood Best Practices Conference.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
And Kevin, I see you.
You are here.
We are here. All right. Well, with that, we're going to end. We had a great program. We also like to thank CODA for allowing us to tape in their administration building here, right here at 33 North High Street. So I'd like to thank them for that. I'd like to thank you for watching, all of our viewing audience out there. So thank you so much, and have a great week, and take care.